Hello everybody, today we're going to take a look at another presidential political shift. This time we're going to go further back. We've got 1956 to 2020, and we also lose two states going back that far, Alaska and Hawaii, so it's just 48 states this time. And if you do want to skip ahead to the map, there will be a chapter down below in the description. But if you want to go through this, let's put up some background of the two elections we're going to compare. 1956, Dwight D. Eisenhower won re-election by a landslide. He got 457 electoral votes, carried 41 states, with 57.4% of the popular vote. The Democrat was Adlai Stevenson. He only got 73 electoral votes, carried 7 states, good enough for 42% of the popular vote. And then, of course, 2020, that election had Joe Biden getting 306 electoral votes, carried 25 states plus D.C. and Nebraska's second, 51.3% of the popular vote. Donald Trump got 232 electoral votes, 25 states plus Maine's second, and 46.8% of the popular vote. So we're skipping many decades this time. I would say there's not too many people that voted in both of these elections, but the one thing to point out is in the South, going back that far, there were some legitimate barriers to voting, so that is going to factor into some of these states where blacks or poor whites were unable to vote. But to make it simple, I just took the data from Wikipedia, so let's get back over to the spreadsheet. Hopefully you think it's beautiful, but I get it, some of you might find it to be off-putting. But we've got the states in the first column: the 56 Democratic vote, that's Stevenson; the 56 Republican vote, Eisenhower; the 2020 Democratic vote, Biden; the 2020 Republican vote, Trump. Then the Democratic shifts between those two elections, followed by the Republican shifts. And the last column, that is the net change between the two parties between the two elections. And I also have shading in this column. The lightest colors are under 5-point shifts. The darkest colors are 10 or more point shifts. So now let's get started in Alabama. In 1956, Adlai Stevenson got 56.5% of the popular vote. Dwight D. Eisenhower got 39.4%. Jump ahead to 2020. Joe Biden dropped down to 36.6%. Donald Trump bumped it up to 62%. That's a net loss of 19.9% for the Democrats, a net gain of 22.6% for the Republicans, and a total net shift of a massive 42.5% away from the Democrats and toward the Republicans. So now we can quickly go through the rest of these states. We'll skip over Alaska and Hawaii. There's not really any shift there. So let's fly through the remaining states. We've got Arizona. That went 22.3% toward the Democrats. Arkansas went 34.3% toward the Republicans. California had a big blue shift of 40.3%. Same in Colorado by 33.2%. In Connecticut by 47.4%. And in Delaware by 29.4%. Florida had a smaller blue shift of 11.3%. Georgia went back toward the Republicans by 33.5%. Idaho had a modest red shift of 8.4%. Illinois, that was Adlai Stevenson's home state in 1956. He did not come close to winning it, but that state did shift 36.1% toward the Democrats. Indiana, small blue shift there of 4.2%. Iowa 10.2% toward the Democrats, as well as in Kansas by 16.5%. Kentucky went 16.8% toward the Republicans. Louisiana, small red shift of 4.8%. Maine went huge toward the left by 50.9%. Maryland by 53.3%, and in Massachusetts by 52.4%. Michigan went in the same direction, but by a smaller 14.2%, and in Minnesota by 14.7%. Mississippi had the biggest shift toward the Republicans by a massive 50.2%. Missouri went red by 15.6%, and Montana, slight red shift there by 2.1%. Now I've got more blue shifts. Nebraska 11.9%, Nevada 18.3%, New Hampshire 39.6%, New Jersey 46.4%, New Mexico 26.8%, and New York by a huge 45.7%. North Carolina slid back toward the right by 2.7%, North Dakota a little bit further by 9.7%, Ohio shifted left by 14.1%, Oklahoma 22.9% toward the Republicans, Oregon 26.6% toward the Democrats, also in Pennsylvania by 14.4%, and Rhode Island by 37.4%. South Carolina had a big red shift of 31.9%. South Dakota, smaller red shift by 9.4%. Tennessee, a stronger red shift of 22.6%. Texas, a little bit of a blue shift there by 5.7%. Utah as well by 8.8%. Vermont had the biggest shift out of all the states. It used to be solid red, and you could see it shifted an unreal 79.8% away from the Republicans and toward the Democrats. Virginia had a solid blue shift as well by 27.1%. Washington by 27.7%. West Virginia lurched in the opposite direction toward the GOP by 30.7. Wisconsin went the other way toward the Democrats by 24.5. And the last state is Wyoming, that went 23.1 toward the Republicans. And here's the national shift, just under 20, 19.9 toward the Democrats. So those are all the shifts, and this wouldn't be any fun without a map. So let's take all this data, we'll put it on a map, let's switch over to it. Here it is, we've got the same basic 3 levels of shading, and let's see if there's any takeaways. Well, it's not unexpected most of the South went hard toward the Republicans. The West Coast and the Northeast, we would expect that to go toward the Democrats. Florida is also dark blue, as well as Rust Belt states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Republicans also had some gains in the upper Great Plains, but this is coming off a high point for the Republicans. Eisenhower won his second term by a landslide. 2020 was a much, much closer election. And going back all the way to 1956, that is very far back. You'd have to look into each of the candidates and the issues at the time, try to find out why certain states voted the way they did, what was going on in the country at the time, how did they run their campaigns. That is more effort if you're interested in going that far. As far as the results go, it's a pretty solid blue shift. Nationally, it went about 20 points toward the Democrats. There's definitely some bright spots here for the Republicans, but a lot of these blue shifts are over 20, 30, or even 40 points. So I'm sure there's a lot more you could say about these shifts. I'm sure some of you know much more about the 1956 election, or maybe you know certain counties and certain states had some shifts of their own worth mentioning. I'm sure you could go on and on about this, but this is just the data from 1956 to 2020. Tons of change in the country over those decades, but hopefully enjoy the map. Let me know in the comments. What do you think about any of the shifts in any of these states? What do you think about any of the candidates? Was there any chance you might have voted in that 1956 election? Let me know down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.